Şimdi müsaadenizle 3. panelimize geçiyoruz. Risk yönetiminde küresel perspektifler. Bu oturumun moderatörü FERMA CEO'su Sayın Laurent Nihoul. Kendisiyle birlikte hocamız KRYD Yönetim Kurulu Başkanı, Eski SPK Başkanı Sayın Profesör Doktor Vedat Akgiray. McKinsey & Company Associate Partnerı Sayın Galileo Husseini. Ve KRYD Yönetim Kurulu Başkan Yardımcısı Sayın Volkan Can'ı sahneye alkışlarla davet ediyoruz.
Good morning. Thank you, gentlemen, first to be in this panel and sharing your insight with us and the Turkish risk management community. When I started to think about this panel, I went through the global surveys. I looked at the risk, but I realized today, I was listening this morning, that a lot of things I wanted to say have already been said. So I would just be repeating myself. So the way I would like to start and think about, the global perspective on risk management is the 3 key messages I believe I have taken from this morning presentation and panels. The first one is indeed, the change we have seen in the risk landscape over the last, 5 to 10 years, and which is about the interconnection between risk. Some of the panelists talk about, these survey, and you have plenty. You have the World Economic Forum, you have all the brokers, insurance companies, and you always have a list of risk, which is, I would say, the way we as risk managers were looking at risk in the past. That's the question we will have for today. How is it still relevant for the future? But you really see that indeed all of these are interconnected. Cyber risk basically is also a business interruption risk. Business interruption risk is also a lack of liquidity. If you think about climate change, it becomes physical risk. If you think about AI, talent shortage, it's all linked to other things. And basically you realize that the old approach of risk management about silos and looking at risk on a standalone basis is maybe not relevant, and I would say it's globally. When we talk about global perspective, that's a challenge you see everywhere in the world. The second message I took is speed. If we look at the changes and the disruption we have seen over the last 5, 10, 20 years, it seems to me, maybe I'm wrong, but from experience, that things are really accelerating. You really see disruption coming. And it's also because of the interconnection, because something happening creates something, a bit of a cascade effect, and something else is happening in another business area or other region in the world. But speed is really, for me, impressive, and I believe it's a key challenge for risk managers, because our time frame maybe has to change or evolve. And that's the third message. It's really, for me, one of the key challenges for risk manager is to adapt our process and our risk management capabilities to 2 kind of time frame. We have short term. Once again, one panelist said about, a few years ago, 5 years was, a long-term period than 1 year. Now we see that indeed 1 year is very long. I mean, if it seems that you have to adapt on a very quickly basis to this change, whilst you still have to manage long-term risk. If we think about climate change, if we think about social changes, we talk about the young generation coming into the profession, talent shortage, everything. It's a different time scale. It's not something that is happening next year. So if I look at the 3 key messages, I would say the global challenge I see for the risk management profession is how we remain relevant. How we help our community to remain relevant for their companies in continuing to create value. In a company, you have to create value in one way or the other, and you have to be part of the business decision and help the company growing, developing its business capabilities, and be sure that, we talked about resilience a lot. That's really how do we help our company to go through these times. And I believe the main challenge for the profession is how do we respond, which brings me to how do we organize ourselves. We have talked a lot about also, I've heard a lot about governance, but I believe it's critical. How do we organize ourselves what is the maturity of our governance process, and how we make sure that we have, I would say, the right path for adapting to this new reality. And that's maybe how I would like to start this panel, with you, Leo. It's about, this governance. I know McKinsey have made some work about, the governance maturity in the risk management process. And as we talk about global perspective, I would love to hear from you about these global governance perspective in terms of how the risk management profession and the risk management professionals in their company are looking at this. What are the challenges and the trends you may have observed at global level?
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Laurent. So I think just a couple of things before the details. So in order to understand all of these global trends, the challenges, what we've done is we've analyzed two of our flagship surveys, the GRZ survey, which is the Governance, Risk and Compliance Survey, and our Resilience Survey. And we tried to analyze the data to understand whether there are some observed trends that we can see. And the surveys are looking at 200 to 300 corporates, truly globally, around the globe, with a good sample of geographically distributed companies with a coverage of different sectors. And some of the trends I highlight are broadly cross-sectoral and truly hold across geographies. I think number one, from a governance standpoint, what we've seen is that today risk is ubiquitous and it has been elevated to the board level. And most corporates today have the final decision approval authority of any risk topics at the board level. And to practically do that, in fact, 2/3 of companies have essentially a board level committee that looks exclusively at risk topics. And that has become quite ubiquitous. On top of that, what we've seen is that companies have invested a lot into increasing the capabilities of their boards when it comes to risk. So when we asked all of these companies about the risk knowledge of their boards, more than half of the companies have indicated that 10 to 50% of their board members have very deep risk capacity and capabilities. So there's clearly an investment in elevating the topic to the board level and increasing the capabilities of board members on that topic. The second big trend is that companies are investing in preparedness and resilience. So a very simple question that we've asked is, how prepared are you to withstand some of the risks, including financial, operational, and all the different risks that we've discussed today? And between 2024 and 2025, the number of companies that felt that they are ready to withstand risk doubled from 15 to 30%. So there is a clear trend towards investing in increasing resilience and preparedness to navigate shocks in the future. And then the last trend I wanted to highlight before talking about some of the challenges that come out of the survey on a global level is on what are the risks, the top risks that are top of mind for risk managers. There is some stability in the top two risks that people have been perceiving over the last 2 years at least. And the top two are, according to our survey at least, regulatory risk linked to policy changes, policy shifts, but also cybersecurity and technology risks. The one that has accelerated drastically is geopolitical risk. It has jumped from being low in the top 10 ranking to the third largest risk that companies are prioritizing and thinking as something that can disrupt their operations. These are some of the broad-based trends. I think on the challenges, from the surveys, there's a couple of challenges that come out as well. Number one is on resourcing. I think there is still some limitation on resourcing of risk functions. And around 40% of the surveyed companies still operate broad-based risk management function with less than 10 employees. And these are large corporates that we're talking about. The second the second challenge, I would say, is the company's self-assessment. So when we asked companies about the level of maturity across several dimensions, there were 3 main dimensions that are essential to risk management that companies still rank themselves quite low in terms of maturity. These are, number one, the adoption of a 3-line of defense model. So there are companies that still believe that on implementing a 3-line of defense model, they are still low in terms of maturity on that dimension. The second one is the adoption of systems and tools to manage risk. The third one, which I believe is very important, is on the adoption of risk-adjusted measures to measure performance and to measure basically compensation. And this is something that has been ubiquitous in more, I would say, developed industries like banking, where risk-adjusted return is a common metric that is used. but on broader industries, it is something that is not widely adopted yet. And I think the third challenge I wanted to highlight is when it comes to preparedness for resilience. One of the questions that we asked was, when faced with a certain challenge or risk, what are some of the measures or levers you would look at implementing? And most, if not all the time, companies end up picking levers and measures that prioritize short-term impact rather than long-term value. To give a bit of a concrete example, when we ask companies about financial resilience and how do they manage a compression in margin, most of them went into choosing cost control and tight cost control rather than investing into what would drive future profitability. So there is a bit this trade-off between implementing measures that have short-term impact versus long-term impact, where companies still prioritize somewhat some of the short-term impact levers.
Yeah, thank you. And you talk about performance. I quote that word, which linked to it's linked to what I was saying about value. There is this old story about risk management in a company is invisible if it does well, because then you don't really see the impact. It's difficult to say we have avoided this, we have created the path for being more resilient, but you do not really see it because it was efficient. And on that note, I would like Volkan maybe to have your view from I would call that more a practitioner, risk manager in a large organization, to see how you see that. Maybe not on a daily basis, but on the strategic or the process basis for your daily job. These governance challenges, the fact that you have to move to something which is more holistic, which is more embedded into the decision making, instead of being risk manager where initially identifying risk, classifying them, maybe proposing a response, but very often management was saying the risk ownership is with the business, which is always with risk manager. We're a bit stop, because indeed the business has to manage risk based on your, I would say, guidance. So how do you see that, I would say, on a daily basis, the evolution of our profession with all these changes, the speed we've talked about, the governance challenges, from your, I would say, practical experience?
Yes, thank you, Laurent. One of the biggest challenges we face today as risk managers with all our colleagues here, when not so long ago, 5 years ago, when you go through with our risk, top 10 risks, we were dealing with mostly the most risks were insurable. But now, when you go through with our top 10 risks, most of them are not insurable. I don't want to give a number, but that's a challenge. So there are two messages here for that perspective. First of all, there is a strong need for support from the insurance market. I know that our partners, insurance partners, are working hard on that. But again, we need more products to support, because our life were easier at those days, because we were, as you mentioned, detecting risks. We just calling our insurance partners, we were getting our premiums, and it's done. The mitigation were done. But now it is more complicated, interconnected. Everyone touched that subject in those panels. So the thing is that the second message is that, okay, most of the risks are not insurable. But at the same time, as Yılmaz Bey mentioned, we shouldn't put an approach like that. We shouldn't avoid risks. So we need to select the correct risks, and we need to manage them well. If we do, as companies, we do this well, we will make the difference out of the competition. I don't want to go through with the specific risk like geopolitical risk, or because the experts already discussed this, and we have some panels in the afternoon session, because they know this better than us. So this is another message, that we need to consult with the experts. We can't know everything. Regarding the geopolitical risks, let's say, some risks are country-level risks. But as a company, in our humble world, what can we do regarding a war risk? Okay, the insurance is a part of, as a tool, as a mitigation tool, but some companies also, we were discussing yesterday, they are creating their own military. There are some examples along that. But regarding those kind of risks, we need to understand what can we do, as you mentioned, because getting those kind of risks from the global surveys, listing them is the easy part. But being the solution partner is the challenging part, as you mentioned. For us, let's say, to be practical, for a geopolitical risk, what can we do? We can diversify our sales challenge. We can diversify our supply chain. We can decide, as risk management department, we can be, part of the decision making for the investment. Which countries will we invest? This is an important point. Evren Hanım mentioned in the early morning, somehow we need to have our escape plans. For that reason, the companies need to diversify their footprint. But that's all I can say. But the system approach is important. Going one by one with the specific risk is okay, but establishing the strong risk governance is the key point here.
Oh, thank you. That's interesting. You were talking about defining, scenarios and having action plan, exit plan, and that's also something we've heard this morning about the difference between risk and uncertainty, and the way to look at this is slightly different. Professor, I would like to ask you about this because I know that's something you like to talk about. Is maybe giving us a bit of a picture of this, new type of uncertainties, and how we can help our community to translate that into practical risk management capabilities to support their organization. That's something I would like to hear from you.
When you talk about risk management, let me change the mood a little bit so people are very serious. No, I don't see any smiling faces. First, let me describe the world, to come to your point in 30 seconds. There's a story about the mathematician Euler. You remember Euler from your algebra calculus classes. They are transferring a fixed number of mad people from one hospital to another hospital. Mm-hmm. And the head count is known. So they all put them in a car or on the train. They count the people in the car, the crazy guys. There's one extra person in the car. How do they figure that? So let's ask them questions. The way they answer, we'll give them out, basically. They come to Euler and they say, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm the world's most famous mathematician." "Okay, you can stay here," they say. So you guys are all Eulers, and that's how the world has become. So smile. Don't talk about those things. Now, there's a famous economist, Keynes. All of you know about him. Personally, I don't agree with most of his sayings, but he was smarter than me, obviously. But I like one sentence he used. He says, optimism is the highest level of intelligence. So intelligent people are optimists. Otherwise, if you are pessimist, you are not good for me, basically. And for risk management profession, I would say pessimism is your worst enemy. You can't afford to be pessimist. So, correcting what Yilmaz said in the morning, or adding to that, I'll say when you go home, risk managers, when you go home at night, there's a song, Que sera sera. It says, "What will be, in French, I guess. Listen to it at night, in the mornings, not before you go to work. When you go to work, be serious. But when you go home, listen to the song. So you do everything you can. So sleep tight. You have to be fresh in the morning. Now, I've been teaching finance for almost, to give out my age, almost 40 years now, in the States and in Turkey, now in Boğaziçi University. And I teach financial engineering mostly, risk management, mathematical finance. Until the year 2009, Laurent, we had different types of risk: classical market risk, liquidity risk, operational risk, and credit risk. There were four. After 2008 global financial crisis, we added to that, at least in my notes I did, what I called funding risk. We have a very good credit standing. I'm a financial institution, I'm a bank, I have money. You ask for money, I say, "Sorry, I love you very much, but not today, we'll do it later." That was funding risk for the rainy days. And then, how do we manage risk? We diversify in different dimensions. We do hedging, risk management or tail risk management, all those nice fancy things. But then COVID-19 hit us. It was a surprise, bad surprise, unexpected, an unknown event. It was global, it was systemic. And after COVID, in my notes, I added, on top of diversification and hedging other well-known mathematical risk management tools, I added prudence. Okay. So ask your father, mother, your grandfather, before you do anything. In Turkish, we have a saying, I don't know how we will translate this, ak akçe kara gün içindir. That became mathematically correct during COVID years. And when you put money aside for the rainy day, in finance, you are irrational. But in your life, you are wise, actually. Okay. So there are many types of risks, and if we get the chance, some risks are known, some are unknown, some are unknowable. For example, I'm surprised when people talk about AI, artificial intelligence, as a new type of uncertainty or risk. It is not. It's a new tool, it's a new technology. Use it. It's not a risk. It's something new. Learn it, use it, maximize its benefits. Don't worry about it. If others can do it better, this means you're not a good business person. Okay. Also, be optimistic. Smile, please. Remember that the average life of the S&P 500 companies, average life, birth to death, is less than 13 years, 1-3. That's the new fact. New ones come in, old ones go out, also companies die. So don't become your company should become you. Continue. That's a fact. No big corporation, small or large, no corporation, from NVIDIA to the small guy in Gebze in Istanbul here, nobody's future is guaranteed. So be smart, do good risk management, and then go home and sleep tight. Okay. And I'll tell you what you should do once we get it in the second round.
Yeah. Thank you. I like it, and believe me, I'm
a math guy. Saying these things
I don't
makes me
think
old,
so.
but
I don't think so. But I believe you're right, and I believe I am pretty optimistic in the sense that, I always say we should see that for our profession. You're right. Sometimes we talk about risk, we talk about event, about disruption. But if we look about, and I like the idea of not being your company, but being,
yourself.
What yourself and what we are a risk manager, it's a fantastic opportunity because it's a new landscape, it's changes, and that's an opportunity to develop ourselves, to create the right tools, to continue to create value and be relevant. I believe it's sometimes the most important question. My fear is always that we are not relevant anymore, meaning that you speak something which is useless, and people, when they are kind, are listening to you. You become a reporting machine. You do nice report, but you do not contribute to the value of the company.
Tomorrow will start tomorrow morning, not tonight. So forget it.
No, for lunch. I will start lunch.
After tomorrow, more breakfast time.
But allow me to go back to the value and performance question, and I know it's also a topic that you can a bit enlighten us about. Is we talk about risk management being relevant, being performant, and it's all about indeed how you organize ourselves, how you respond to these challenges, how you remain optimistic. And then you have to demonstrate value, I believe, first for you, for your own selfish, self-recognition, also for your company. But how is it seen? How do you look at this from the outside? If I look at how, let's say, the market or potential investor look at the value of the risk management, or we talk a lot about resilience, into the value of a company. So if you have as in everything in life, you have people who are better at certain things. If you have a good, relevant, well-embedded risk management process, which allow your company to be more resilient and move to the future with a better preparation and being able to keep it optimistic in looking at these risks coming, because we have a response. how is it looked at from the outside? Because it's for me, I have to say, it's something which looks quite complex to say.
I got some notes here, Laurent. If it's my turn again, so
Yes,
I'll speak
we
for
can do
3
1, 2,
minutes
2,
and
2,
then
3.
they can criticize me. Now, we've been teaching and implementing risk management. Basically, risk management is largely based on mathematics. You have probabilities, stochastic models, probability assessment, mostly, not all of it, obviously. We manage financial risk, we manage production risk, operational risk, mostly math, mostly. That's the old school way of teaching, okay? But the world is changing so fast, not in a bad sense, I mean, in bad sense and good sense. Probabilities are not fixed. When you have stochastic probabilities, changing probabilities, your math models are only so good. So that's bygone, okay? But economists, there was Frank Knight, there is what we call 19 uncertainty. You can't model them mathematically. That's what we are living in right now, okay? So resilience, meaning to the best of my understanding, is not to break, basically. I mean, not to keep being profitable, but not to break, not to go under. That's what adaptability, flexibility, agility, they call it, agile. I don't know what it means, but that's how they okay. But there are new sources of uncertainty, and I have a criticism for you. Geopolitics, nice word, wars and all those things. It has to do with energy and security. For example, in France, I don't think French people are complaining about the price of oil, because France energy is 90% nuclear. So who cares about the oil price in France, mostly?
Yeah, people
Mostly.
driving their car.
Yeah, don't drive the car. I mean, take the bus. But if as a corporation, as a company, as a region, as a country, if we were more dependent on renewable sources of energy, like wind and solar and hydroelectricity, oil price wouldn't be as big of a problem for you as otherwise. So maybe this bad event in the Gulf, maybe prompt us further, trigger us further to invest in non-oil and non-fossil energy sources. That's one good that may come out of this thing, okay? Disruptions in global trade, I mean, it's your nightmares, I mean, logistics. I don't know what you can do with that. Climate-related risks are very real, but then we remember it, and then we tend to forget about it, and then continue for it. In Europe, we always remember that, but in other parts of the world, we listen to it, and then we don't listen to it. It goes like that. But that's very real, but a criticism for scientists and academicians, climate risks are mathematically modelable. I mean, they are parametric. They can be defined in terms of metrics and parameters. So they can be made part of mathematical models of risk management, climate risks. I mean, start with carbon, and go to water, go to waste management. It's all doable, but scientists and finance guys don't talk to each other very much. Another thing people talked about the currency risk in Turkey, the dollar, Turkish lira rate, and so on and so forth. You have to understand that over the last 5 or 6 years, central banks have changed. Okay? They lost power. They are not the only sheriff in town anymore. Markets are more powerful, don't forget that. Plus, it's changing. Central banks, remember there was a term called forward guidance, like central bank with their words and speeches will make it easier for you to see what is coming up. It's not anymore. Nobody talks about forward guidance because central banks have become not predictive but not reactive, if you will. They react to events. It's a sign of loss of power. Okay, I mean, the Fed in the U.S., ECB, Turkish Central Bank, look what they've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years. They are reacting like we are reacting. So don't expect too much of that. Okay, Sarah, you live with them. Okay. Volatilities, because probabilities are become more uncertain, more difficult to predict. Volatilities have increased. Plus, volatility estimation has also become difficult because there is an increase in volatility of volatility numbers. So just smile. I mean, we can't do much about it. Investor psychology, that's important. I mean, I mean, if I knew what President Trump would tweet in the morning, I could make some money out of it, but I don't know. Okay, but it affects billions of people. Not President himself, but social media. Our psychologies, the way we perceive markets is changing like almost every week. All of us. The most ignorant of us, the more informed of us. So what people will do, like Newton said, Isaac Newton, the main famous, physics guy, he was also the head of the UK Mint, where they print money, actually. And he lost all his wealth in the South Sea bubble crisis. And he said, I can model the movement of particles, but not what people will do, actually. Newton, so what can you do, what can I do? Okay. Now, what needs to be done? Shall I go into or just stop here?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Stop.
So if I may say, I take all of these very positively. I just think that for our fellow risk manager, if you go to your boss and he asks you, we have a business, we have an organization, how is risk management performing? How are you looking at things? And if you tell him, que sera, sera,
you'll be fired for sure. That's for the better.
Yeah, and he would tell you, well, what the hell is that? And you would say, yeah, but I'm quite optimistic for the future. So he would say, yeah, so maybe but I take the point, and back to the gentleman over there about this.
Well, I mean that. Be optimistic and then do your homework.
Absolutely, yes. No, I like that. I mean, you always have to look at the future optimistically, because it's about what you can bring to anticipate and adjust to the situation and the scenario once it occurs. It doesn't mean you have to be pessimistic. So back to you, gentlemen, and that's a question. You can tell me who wants to take it, but it's really, and that's my nature. I like to be back to reality and back to the ground. I have been a risk manager for many, many years. And sometimes you hear all this stuff and then you say, Jesus, what does it mean? And I have to sit at my desk, I have to go in my company, what do I do?
You're fired.
Yeah. No, I have never been fired. And so we are talking about, resilience
Yes.
and shifting more. That's something we see for the last year, shifting more from, risk management to resilience, which means indeed working more on scenario, working more on strategy for adaptation, and not necessarily a probability about risk and exposure. It's really how are we prepared to maneuver our organization through geopolitical tension, which may have an impact on supply chain. As we said, cyber on business interruption. Then we have funding risk, we have liquidity risk, all this stuff. So how do you look at that shift as risk management practitioner from what I would call the older vision of the risk manager, as I said, identification, assessment, maybe a bit of action plan, but very limited, into something which is much more in the strategy and the decision-making about preparing the organization to not necessarily avoid risk, but being able basically to face them. Yes. And continue to move forward.
Yeah. Maybe to jump in that very quickly, I think to your point on, risk management is not about protecting value. It's about managing all of the uncertainty to create value going forward. And I think in volatile, just maybe an example from a, let's say, volatile region of the world where I come from, in the Middle East, how do companies nowadays practically navigate all of that volatility? I think there are two important elements. Number one is communication, to have really open line of communication internally without the organization and with the board in terms of how are things progressing, what is happening. Risk is not a topic that needs to be discussed once every quarter at the board. It is something that needs to be brought up on a daily basis and managed accordingly. And I think very practically, an example on how some of the companies right now in the Middle East navigate some of the geopolitical risks. The most important tool I've seen is this scenario and simulation tool. And essentially, whenever some of these crises hit, there's three things that companies look for actively. One is, what is going to be the depth of the disruption? What is going to be the length of the disruption? And how fast do we believe the recovery is going to be? And very quickly, whenever one of these events hit, similar to the recent geopolitical developments, there will be dashboards put up to try to kind of, number one, put forward what are all the potential simulations out there that could pan out according to these three dimensions. And how do we believe we will manage that as an organization if that scenario plays out? And the important thing to understand is also to try to assess what scenario of the world is unfolding right now. So when it comes to the depth of the crisis, looking at some indicators like how are stock markets reacting in the region, how are some of the credit spreads reacting, looking at the length of the disruption, some of the key elements companies look at actively is, for example, the increase or the decrease of frequency of some of these disruptions, some of the attacks, how fast is infrastructure able to recover, has the airport open, at what capacity. So looking at all of these indicators allows the company to understand out of all the simulations in front of them, which one is the most likely that is unfolding, and where do we think we will land in each of those. And the next step to that is not to stop at that level, but really to take it one level forward and not be the risk person only highlighting what the risks are in every scenario, but working with the businesses to become a partner in terms of understanding what our strategic optionality is in each of these scenarios, and accordingly putting together a set of options, either to the management, to the board, to preempt if X unfold, what is it that we would do? What would be our stance? Are we resilient from an infrastructure standpoint? Do we have enough financial buffer to withstand some of these shocks? So that is a bit some of the key things that practically some of the companies are doing in these volatile events.
Yeah. Now, I like that idea about the uncertainties and looking at this and adapting the strategy. In a discussion I had months ago, we were talking about that scenario planning, uncertainties, instead of risk. And then we were looking at the scenario. You take a scenario and then you put the uncertainties, you do a cross. And there was an interesting reflection, which was the scenario should not change. What also the risk manager should do is monitoring how the uncertainty is evolving. Because it's not probability, but your scenario should be correct. Was it the fact that Europe distantiates from the US, or Europe is united or fragmented? The scenario is correct, but the time gives you a bit of more accuracy on the uncertainty. We are more to the left, and then you have 4 scenarios, and you have to adapt your strategy. I realize that we are preventing people to go for lunch, so we should have maybe a bit of a conclusion. Maybe Volkan, you want to say a few words also about resilience and how you see that in your own process.
Okay, first of all, I am smiling because Vedat Bey is the reason why we are employed here as risk leaders. Why? We already discussed that. He was in his term as the Turkish capital market, presidency. They put the regulations for the, early risk detection committees. So
I apologize for that. I'm sorry.
So the thing is that you mentioned risk management. We don't see it once we don't have any crisis. And the resilience. The thing is that most of the organizational structures we have today is not all of them, but most of them, especially for the real sector. The finance sector has their own maturity, corporate maturity, but the real sector is the product of the industrial revolution. For that reason, it is that processes are more valid for the repeatable processes. Change is slow, and this is not valid for today's world. And as organizations, one of our main mission is to, increase the maturity of this, corporate maturity. The thing is that as these processes, purchase department, sales department, operations, the value of the risk management. Let's say, you mentioned the risk management and the company value relation. The risk management departments are acting like as the immune system of the companies. You don't see it, but at the same time, by the way, immune system is not just for the defense of your body. A good sportsman, let's say, 100-meter runner, has to have a good immune system. So the thing is that the risk management connects the dots between these departments, move intelligence from each other. So it means that for this kind of interconnected, we are talking about the interconnected risks. So it is very crucial that companies have to invest for these, capabilities. And second, we already discussed this in the earlier panels, resilience. Resilience is not, as you mentioned also, is a defensive approach only. It is also valid for the football game, soccer game, for the sports game. If you concentrate only on the defense, you will lose the game. So attack is another kind of defense. You need to, target attacking. So what do I mean? Companies have to select the correct risks and attack them. So that's why the company value will increase. If you manage our risks correctly, it will affect our company value. And Leo mentioned this regarding the defense. There are some standards, COSO standard, ISO standard, and this 3 line of defense. But by the way, they changed it. It's not 3 lines of defense system. It is 3 lines, they call it. But to me, in my humble world, I think we need to forget about these lines. There is no lines. Because if we, isolate our practices from the, operational work, they will not value us. So as you mentioned, risk lists are still important, because if we say that we need to forget about risk lists, we will put pressure on our audience. We can still use PowerPoint and Excel. We don't have to change everything. But at the same time, and there is a famous saying, I don't know how to change it to the Turkish, but our founding, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk's saying, hattı müdafaa değil, sattı müdafaa. The Turkish saying is that there is no line of defense, there is area of defense. So it is very crucial, and it's very valid for this era, I think. If we only concentrate on the, the lines, and if we put us as the risk management beyond those lines, we will not be the solution partners. We need to be the solution partners to create value.
Thank you, gentlemen. In the last minute, I would like to ask you, the 3 of you, that's me, I like people to leave with a practical piece of advice. So if you would have to give the audience, our fellow risk managers, as you said, they are going to go tonight and tomorrow, tomorrow is Saturday, but they will work on, what would be, in just a few words, your main piece of advice about what they should start to look at or focus on tomorrow?
5 things I put,
we keep it short,
in the
because
morning.
we have to go to lunch.
20 seconds. What needs to be done? First of all, we have to revise our mathematical models of risk. Put climate risk in it, and in our research center, we are working with climate scientists, and make it mathematically computable. Okay. Correlations are changing. Psychology can be also numericized. That's number 1. Risk management tools are more important than ever before. I'm not saying forget about them. You have to do it first. Homework number 1. Homework number 2. Diversify. You look at the world. Diversify not across assets, but across asset classes and geographical also. Don't depend on Europe or the US or China alone. Kick them all. Diversify. You know what it means, okay? Plus, sorry, I say when you go home, listen to the song, but you need real-time monitoring. Things are changing so fast. Your dashboards, maybe at least once a week you have to revise your dashboard. I'm sorry, too much work for you. Plus, experience is now more important, because we are living through unknowable events. Experience, not by, I don't mean by age, by that. Experienced people should be more welcome in the boards than before. Experience, because we need prudence, we need foresight, okay? And finally, what you'll do tomorrow, don't be caught with only one foot on the ground. If you have too much debt in your balance sheet, reduce that level. Don't be caught with high indebtedness today. Plus, if your balance sheet is not diversified enough, from the supplier's side or from your customer side, wherever you are, or your financial side, diversify immediately. Before this weekend, that would be my very practical recommendations. Reduce your debt and reduce your undiversified portion of your business. That's very critical, I think. And don't sell everything to Iran, for example. or to
Okay, thank
Israel
you.
or whatever. I mean, just take them out of your balance sheet. So who cares?
Thanks. Maybe
Very short, like I would just say, basically don't be the person who flags the risks, but be the person who works with the businesses in identifying options to navigate these risks and not only flagging them. I think that's the single most important thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Volkan, the conclusion is yours.
I don't want to prolong, but our main duty, every trauma in the world, Enron crisis, then audit and risk departments evolve and restructured, world wars, and then new alliances, occur. We are in a similar, era, I think, and the main duty is to create trust, as the risk governance. We need to create trust so that our companies will be more brave to invest. And finally, for the boards, first of all, at the beginning of the board meetings for the risk management, the tension needs to increase at the beginning. So it means that you show the risk well. But at the final, everybody needs to relieve because you need to give the solutions at the end. This is the main issue, I guess. We need to create trust with our risk governance.
They keep adding time on it. I mean, I think the clock
We
is
are
working
beyond
in the right
6 minutes.
I didn't see we have a clock.
Yeah. It came down to 0, now it's going up. So
Okay.
we'd better get out. So, I mean,
No, but we can, I believe we have come to an end. So thank you very much, gentlemen. I mean, people will be happy to be a bit earlier for lunch.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
they are
okay.
late 6 minutes. That's what it means.
Oh no, we are late. It's not the clock.
Yeah,
Okay. So
came
yeah,
down
we
to
should.
0
So
and
thank
then
you
one
very
more.
much, gentlemen. Thank you.
Please stay on stage. We will.
Onu dinlesin gençler. Söyle abi.
Evet, katkılarınız için teşekkür ediyoruz. Öğle yemeği için şimdi ara vereceğiz. Saat 13.45'te yeniden bekliyoruz burada sizleri.